Every man is impacted by menopause in their lives. There's about 70 different symptoms. There are women who wake up 4 or 5 times a night, drenched in sweat. 51% of the world's population go through it directly, and 100% is affected by it. Menopause, or women's health in general, is a taboo topic. The system is failing women.
So welcome. Today's guest is Sonja Beckerhoff. It's lovely to have you here with us, Sonja. If you'd like to just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, what your experience is, it'd be great to hear from you.
Lovely. Thanks, Angela. Thank you so much for having me. Amazing opportunity. So I work in the construction space and have for many years. Prior to that, I worked in the waste and automotive industries. So yeah, it's an exciting period, and what I really love is the work that I do, and the passion is menopause and middle-aged women, and how we fare in the workplace.
Yes, and that's a big topic because there's a lot of women who are getting to that stage in life, let's say, and these sorts of things are things that haven't been considered previously with workplace design and workplace solutions to make it better for women. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about why this is something you're so passionate about. Have you got some lived experience of dealing with this, and what does that look like?
I certainly have some lived experience of dealing with that. I'm at the other end of that. At 56, I'm what's called post-menopausal. So I've gone through the really difficult phase of perimenopause, which is the time when our hormones fluctuate the most, where we get the hot sweats, the mood swings, the cognitive fog, and stuff like that. And it was back then that I thought, oh, this is not the me that I know. I noticed changes in the way I was turning up at work, the way I was showing up, the way I was attacking my work. And it just became too much. And I thought, I used to be able to manage that, and now I didn't recognize myself. I couldn't concentrate for 5 minutes at a stretch. And that was really disturbing because I was a high achiever. On my DISC profile, I was continuously a D, and that whole phase totally and utterly threw me. And I thought there needs to be a better way of doing that. So I got into training, started with neuro-linguistic programming, which is, addressing part of the self-talk that we go, like, I should be able to do this. And then that self-fulfilling prophecy, I can't do that anymore. That got me then into mindfulness, trying to find a solution through meditation and mindfulness approach. And then after that, I got into neuroscience to understand how it actually all works on a technical, scientific level. And then recently I got my menopause coaching certificate, and I love applying that and helping women in those industries, in those so-called male-dominated, not that I like the word, but male-dominated industries, manage that better for themselves, but also working towards addressing and supporting organizations through that phase, because they do lose a lot of their very experienced women, right? And it's not necessarily only women at a leadership level. We're talking about the high performing or the high functioning women, but it's not only the women at the C-suite, it's your dock controllers, it's, your site engineers, it's health and safety professionals, it's finance, it's at every single level, because it's age dependent, not seniority level in an organization.
Mm-hmm. What I'd love to, and I agree with you, and it's hard when you're going through menopause, and apologies to all the men for this, but this is actually a topic that's really important to talk about, because men don't understand what it is that we have to go through as women in regards to this, and the changes that happen with our bodies and our hormones and how that actually impacts us. So it is actually a really vital topic to talk about, to help shine a light on what that actually looks like, and how that actually affects a woman as well. And every male would have a significant woman in their life, so it is very important for you to understand what it is, so you could support whoever that significant woman is. But you touched on about like the coaching and then the neuroscience part as well. I'd love to understand a little bit more from the neuroscience part. What does that look like what you uncovered as part of that scientific evidence with it?
So if we look at the biological aspects of perimenopause and menopause, we have a limited number of eggs in our ovaries. And once we get towards the end part of that, there's obviously less activity happening there. But our ovaries drive our estrogen production. And as our ovaries decrease their production, we produce less estrogen in our brains. And this is where the neuroscience aspect comes from. We have estrogen receptors as we have in many other cells of our bodies. And so they then relate to serotonin and dopamine production, which works on how our mood systems, for example, how we manage that. It affects our cognitive thinking, because for, let's say, 35 to 45 years of age, that's when menopause hit, we've had a fairly, perimenopause to be technically correct, we've had a fairly stable supply of estrogen. And so our brains get used to that fairly stable supply. Yes, it fluctuates throughout the month, but in itself, it's fairly stable. Once we hit that perimenopause phase, it literally goes up and down. It's like a seismic earthquake. And that just throws the whole chemical hormonal balance in our brains into a disarray. And what essentially happens is, like an analogy is, if your brain, it's like your house, if it was running on coal-fired energy for many years, then all of a sudden you switch to electricity, right? You're still getting it, but it's a different connection. It's a different system of how that all works. And our cognitive thinking is impacted because with all those changes, there is, we also have less energy in the brains during the perimenopause phase. It does come back after we hit menopause, but during that construction phase, for lack of another word, everything is in disarray. So decision making becomes slower. There's the cognitive word, the looking for words on occasion, walking into a room not knowing why you did that, stopping mid-sentence. The mood is affected, and there's so much happening. And of course, then on top of that, there's all like the physical aspects, where loss of muscle mass. And we live in a society where especially for women, we're still judged by our appearance. So when that changes, it comes hand in hand with a hit to our self-esteem, because all of a sudden, the size 8 or 10 or whatever, 12 doesn't fit anymore. So many components. And then that affects our self-confidence. And then we turn up to meetings, and especially in male-dominated industries, we always think we have to perform twice as good as the men anyway. And it's just that downward slide in its own way. And like you said before, yes, every man has a significant others, but it's actually a 360 cycle, because in every man, there's probably a mother. Well, not probably, most likely, there is a mother. Then on that same level, there is a partner, female colleagues. And then on a downward junior is, the daughters, right? So every man is impacted by menopause in their lives, whether it's upwards. And a lot of men probably don't want to see their daughters suffer through that as well.
Absolutely. And it's because it's not something that happens over a short term as well. Like, it's something that can happen over many years, all of this. With the understanding and knowledge that you have, what is kind of that, and I appreciate it varies for everyone, but that time frame of what it is when women go through the perimenopause to get to the other side where it's menopause then?
So typically, on average, women start around 45 at age 45 with perimenopause, and it lasts, again, on average 7 years. So you come out at about 52, 53, which is also the time, as we said before, where women are at their prime in a career. The distribution is a little bit like a bell curve. That's where the majority sit, but there are also women who go through menopause through perimenopause for 12 to 13, 14 years, sometimes even.
I just couldn't imagine what that would be like, going through that, having the brain fog and the night sweats and the, just that whole lot of stuff that goes with it. Just to help make people aware of what it actually is, what are some of the key elements to let them know what perimenopause is, of what actually happens to the body and the changes, and like you touched on about the brain fog and different things like that?
So what most women experience, and the typical symptoms, are hot flashes and night sweats, that sudden increase in temperature where you start sweating quite profusely. And I touched upon the estrogen before. The loss of estrogen actually impacts the temperature regulating part in your brain. So that is just not being enough estrogen. And when throughout the day, I don't want to say it's manageable, but you're already awake. When you have the night sweats, there are women who wake up 4 or 5 times a night, drenched in sweat, having to change their PJs and the sheets. On top of that, are sleep disturbances. So not only are you waking up because you have your hot flashes, but also your sleep isn't as regular and as deep as used to be. There's a typical 2:30, 3 a.m. wake up, and then you don't fall asleep again, or you fall asleep at 5, like I tend to do, and then your alarm goes off at 5:30. Brilliant.
5:30. Yeah.
On the back of that, you get your fatigue, which you carry forward through the day, and then you've got your stress levels at work. Maybe you have to get kids to school. Then we spoke about the neurological impacts of that, the brain fog, the forgetfulness, the mood swings really, really apparent where women used to have. I know that's what I suffered from most was the mood swings. I never had a lot of patients, but I had some. But during perimenopause, that just went to zero. And
Wow.
anything and everything and everybody would just set me off. It was
Wow.
really, really bad. The number of pencils I broke, just because I was so angry, but I couldn't let it out. I could have
Yeah.
I could have, I don't know. It's just you can't scream at people, and I had a
Yeah.
physical wish to hurt somebody, right? And you can't do that, but that's how that rage comes out. And I looked at
Wow.
myself, and I'm going, that is scary, and that's why I went down that training path. So mood swings is something that is really difficult for many women. Anxiety up to depression that comes in there. And then, as we said before, the muscle loss and the shifting body.
So many things, isn't there? Like it's like you just become another person, really.
It is, and that's just the iceberg. There's about 70 different
Yeah.
symptoms. Skin, hair, itchiness. Your body can go like into electric shocks, where you just go like that, like spasm.
Yeah.
It's
So many things. The body is amazing with what it does, but far out, it can be punishing at the same time as well, can't it?
Yeah, and for women, we've gone through puberty, and men go through, or boys go through that as well. So I think on that level, we're sort of on par. Women then have that whole pregnancy aspect as well that men don't have. So that is an additional toll on the body. And to be honest, men do go through something, or can go through something similar. It's called andropause, but it's a very gradual decline in their hormone levels, about 1% annually. Whereas with the women, it's quite dramatical, and it's that fluctuation that makes it really, really difficult. So we get like a double or even a triple whammy. And, when we're talking about the women at that age, 45, let's say to 55, let's just expand that. You might have teenage children at home that are going through puberty as well. Or if you were a young mother, a younger mother, you're looking at an empty nest. So that's an emotional toll that's taking as well. You're high achieving, high functioning. It's all coming together. And on top of that, you're expected to do the shopping and everything else that women just do, right? And you're trying to deal with somebody that you don't really know anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And just even like if you are in that age group and you're going through it and you're dealing with teenagers, like they're testing at the best of times, let alone, if you've got the rage and stuff going on. So they're certainly testing the buttons, I can imagine. But now you touched on that, with what you went through, and that's what's kind of driven you to go and, become a menopause coach and stuff. So what have you experienced, like when you were going through it in that workplace? What did you experience from more of an awareness perspective that happened in a workplace? Was there awareness, or was there just no awareness and you just had to deal with it? What did that look like for you?
It looked mainly like having to deal with it. There was no awareness. I mean, I remember like in performance reviews, it's like, Sonja, you're too direct. And it's like, I'm really trying to hold my shit together here. sorry the language, but it is a little bit like that. So
Yeah,
and people just thought it was stress related, but didn't actually understand what's causing that and the struggles that come along with that. I've tried to raise it in the office space as well, and at work. The challenge there is that perimenopause, menopause, or women's health in general is a taboo topic. You said it earlier on when we spoke, we want to raise the awareness, but how do you raise it up on a taboo topic that nobody wants to talk about because it's just one of those, oh, let's not touch it, right? And that makes it difficult. But I think we need to talk about it for all the reasons before that. There's 51% of the world's population go through it directly, and 100% of everybody is affected by it. So, yeah, when I went through it, not a lot of awareness and not a lot of understanding on many levels, even from other women, and I found that really surprising.
Mm. I don't, to be honest. I don't find it surprising. So, especially if they haven't been through it. And I mean, to be fair, nothing against anyone, but you don't know what you don't know. So unless you're actually experiencing it, it would be very hard to understand what that feels like on your body as well, like what the changes your body is going through, unless you've personally have been through it and understand it. So yeah, to be fair, I can kind of understand that. So with where you've got to now, where you're a menopause coach, what does that look like exactly? What is the work that you're doing, and how are you making a difference in regards to that?
So I've trained as a menopause coach to, have a proper understanding. I do reach out to women in organizations and have those conversations just to give them a bit of self-confidence and raise awareness and allowing them to make an informed choice about, the options, treatments that are out there, but primarily to let them know that it's absolutely normal what they are going through.
Yeah.
And just knowing that you're not alone and giving that support, I think is what I really like to do. And I've seen the changes, and they go, oh, that's why. Yeah, they have that epiphany when they talk about it, and you can say, yep, that's a hormonal change. This is what's happening in your brain. This is why your body is
Yeah.
reacting that way, and you take away that feeling of guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And obviously, every conversation you have is an important one, and I guess taking that then to the next level and trying to place it in organizations, and not only sort of giving women the confidence back, but making men aware of that. I guess it takes a bit of courage to walk up to a guy and say, you know what, take a step back. I'm going through menopause. Like, cut me
Got
some
the rage going
cut me
on.
some slack here, mate.
Yeah. So in that regards, like I'll just touch on a couple of things that you said there, like for women, knowing what support is available for them. So what support is available? Because this isn't, I mean, there's starting to be a bit more awareness about women's health, but it's not something that's really been well invested in, let's be honest. And but as far as with support, what kind of support is readily available for women to access to understand that it is a hormonal change? It's not them going batshit crazy, that their body is going through changes and it is affecting them. Where could they go to get that kind of support?
I guess the first place would be your GP, although we have to be a little bit aware of that as well, that GPs have about 7 to 10 hours of training around perimenopause and menopause during their whole medical training. So there's a bit of lack of understanding and awareness. It is catching up, but if you have an older GP, they could probably still be stuck in that little to no awareness. There are more and more menopause coaches available. There's the Australasian Society for Menopause. That is a really good place to go to if you're looking for that official, I guess, treatment in terms of potentially getting HRT, so hormone replacement therapy and stuff like that. The other thing I think women can do is have their own support network. There are support groups out there online that you can get, and if possible, even starting something within an organization.
Mm. So with what you're doing, with working with companies to help bring awareness about this, what does that look like? Like, how do you kind of tackle it? Because as you've touched on, like when you went through it, and, obviously working in a male dominated environment doesn't make it easy because it's a taboo subject, of course, but it's something that, like it's no different. There's a lot more awareness now about, periods and making sure there's period products available in toilets, making sure there's female toilets available. So there's a lot more awareness about kind of this sort of stuff. So with an approach of how to do this, how would you tackle this, and what would you like to see companies be able to do to really take this on board and have an awareness and an understanding about it?
I think tackling it is the way in is to talk about productivity and retaining your very experienced workforce, right? So looking at the impact that that workforce has on your business, and it's the retention, because those are women with experience. They mentor, they carry a lot of knowledge with them. We need women for any team to work together well. So tackling that productivity issue, the cost of re-recruiting new people, and so it's that productivity and financial issue that typically gets you through the door. We've seen the introduction of menopause leave being introduced into health and well-being. So I think that is a really big step forward. But like so many other things, there's a policy, great, and we all know that policies sometimes look very well on paper, but it's the implementation of that.
Yeah.
And so, there are workshops. You can do awareness programs. It could be something like a lunch and learn for an hour, just sort of to cover, I guess, that top part of the iceberg, to raise that awareness. And then you can obviously go in and, talk in more detail on things that could be done to assist women to not cope better, but to change the workplace to make it easier for them. And I know it's not everything is possible in every organization. We're looking at COVID showed us that working from home is quite workable. I know it doesn't work everywhere, but we also know that the occasional day at home doesn't necessarily impact productivity, and it could help the women out a lot.
And to the point about productivity, I mean, productivity directly links to a workplace culture,
Yep.
and a workplace culture encompasses like so many things, but it's actually like really the fundamental part is it's about having that care and concern for the well-being of your people,
Yep.
and making sure that they've got an environment where there's, everyone's working to similar values, whatever that may be, but those values are held accountable, and the beliefs and the behaviours as well. So what will and won't be tolerated, but having a psychological safe workplace where people can go, you know what, I'm actually dealing with menopause and I'm having a really shitty time right now. So probably a good idea to not come up and talk to me because I might bite your head off, or whatever that looks like, But, because there is always this, I always say there is this bottom line of cost that happens in a workplace that people aren't necessarily tracking, which directly links back to productivity, retention, culture, all of that kind of stuff. Just even the turnover of people costs a huge amount of money. So, to your point about having experienced people, and if you've got experienced people, especially women who are in male dominated industries, we are the rarity. Like, you want to hold on to them. Let's just say you had a magic wand and you could go, this is what I'd love to see as far as companies had. What would that look like for you?
Definitely the policy, because that will give us an umbrella approach to work to. I would like to see work groups. I would like to see more education. I would like to see it included in, in HR assessments, for example. When women leave, do we actually ask the question, why are women leaving at that age? And, accepting the honest answer for what it is. The support groups, which can be either women only or a mixed group, because I think we need both.
Yeah.
We need a safe space for women to just get together and talk to each other, but we also need the male support. The flexible workplace, I think, is a really big thing. And I don't want to have like a red and green thingy on my desk saying, talk to me now or don't talk to me now. But
Yeah.
you touch upon the psychosocial safety, just the ability to say, look, I'm having a bad day, not like the okay depression kind of day, but I'm just really struggling with my emotions at the time. Just give me some space and not be looked down upon, but just saying, okay, yes, I get it.
Yeah.
instead of getting the, oh gosh, she must be menopausal or something like that.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
just give us the respect that that situation deserves. That
Yeah.
is, if I could waive that, and the fact that, yeah, I can say, look, I'm going through perimenopause, please understand, right? If women are pregnant, it's quite obvious, there's I'm going to say a big belly, but it's there, and everybody, or not everybody, but we tend to embrace that, and we go,
Yeah.
that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Perimenopause isn't exciting, but it should come with the same
So,
understanding and the same, I understand it's difficult. I get it. I've got your back.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's go for a coffee.
But it is that it comes back to that whole thing about caring about your people and wanting to support your people and look after your people, because I always say at the end of the day, your people are your most valuable resource that you've
Yeah.
got. Because the work doesn't get done without the people. Yes, okay, we've got AI and all of this sort of stuff that's happening. But the thing is that it's going to be the people who know how to use AI that's going to be kept in the future as well. So
You've used the word resources, right? And where I think organizations are struggling is, where do you place that whole menopause piece? The policy definitely sits in HR, but if we look at the remit that is HR, it doesn't look at menopause, right? The policy, yes, but how to work with that doesn't sit with HR.
mm,
OH&S, we're looking primarily at safety.
mm,
Where does that well-being, because menopause could very well sit under a well-being umbrella, but where
mm,
does that sit in an organization? And
yeah,
as a mental health first aider, we look at depression and we look at suicide, and it sort of needs to sit in that space as well. But then
mm,
because it's women, it goes to HR, but HR going, no, we're looking at recruitment, at retention, at
yeah,
remuneration,
yeah,
not really ours. You go to safety and they go, there, not really ours. So I've seen a lot of people go, the system is failing women. And I think there could be a system, but we need
yeah.
to create it, and we need to find a place where menopause can sit comfortably.
But you're exactly right with what you've said, like the mental health, the suicide. I'll say it's not just menopause, like it is women's issues, because
Yeah,
women go through endometriosis. You know, they might have pregnancy issues, they might have issues with periods. Like some women have incredibly
yeah,
painful periods as well, which is not HR and it's not safety, but it's that kind of thing. But it kind of touches on both of them, but it's in between, really.
yeah.
So, and the system hasn't been designed for it.
No,
It's that well-being piece essentially.
yeah. I think that is probably the biggest gap in that space. I know that in many organizations, that mental health tends to sit with safety, but not always.
Well, maybe there's an opening there that we create a well-being in construction industries, or
Yeah,
you know, in these male-dominated industries, to say you actually need to set up a well-being division, and boom, 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 these are all the things that they need to be tasked with, which is not a HR function, it's not a safety function, because safety is there about making sure people are sticking to the legislation, they're not getting fined, they're physically safe. They don't necessarily, and nothing against safety people, but they don't necessarily focus on the psychological safety.
yeah,
Um, you know, their focus is the work safe, physically safe, where people are not going to be harmed or injured. And yes, psychological safety does touch on that a bit, but it's not the primary focus, unfortunately. So then HR, as you said, like they touch on the recruitment, they touch on, you know, like performance reviews, they touch on performance management, you know, promotions, a bunch of, I mean, there's obviously a bunch of other stuff as well, but it is kind of a gap in between them that needs to be looked at and considered for sure. So
it's often like you're doing it.
yeah, yeah. But then you think about the individual, where do they go to?
Yeah,
Where do they get the support internally for something like this to be able to say, hey, you know, because then if you start taking days off, then that could end up being a performance issue. So then you get managed by HR. But then if it's, you know, let's just say if it's something where you're being bullied at work, then that's actually a safety issue because that sits under the Workplace Health and Safety Act. But no one actually then takes responsibility. So
yeah. I think that, yeah, you're right. That is where that gap is, and I haven't yet been able to come up with a golden wand on how to do that. So typically, talking to both departments is probably the way to go, and because nobody really needs a third department, although one might need to be created. But carving it out somewhere between the two of them, because they're, I know it doesn't sit in quality or any of those other ones. Like it needs to sit with one of these two.
Yeah, and this, I mean, this all ties back to the structural challenges that we have in the industry as well.
It is, and yeah, when you go through the research, it's almost like, you know, the system is failing the women, or we're working in systems that aren't actually made for the way that we
We
function.
work. I agree. So moving forward, based on the experience that you've got, and particularly in this space, like as a menopause coach and everything like that as well, which I think is incredible. I'd never heard about a menopause coach until I met you, so that was awesome to know. But you know, for people to be able to, if they were to come to you, what kind of stuff would you be able to help support them with, and how would you guide them with this stage of life, essentially?
It is an assessment with what they struggle with most, what is foremost on their mind, and then working through that. So, for example, if sleep disturbance is a big issue, and it is for a lot of them, we look at sleep hygiene, what you can do, and that could involve like getting off your computer or iPhone, smartphone, at least an hour before you go to bed, a cool bedroom, a dark bedroom, layered clothing so you can sort of take it off, or layered bed sheets and stuff like that. The other thing that wakes women up a lot is that cortisol spike at around 3, which does wake us up. So
Mm.
eating in such a way that your cortisol doesn't spike at that time. If I had a magic wand, I would love to just wave that and make everything go away. But every woman is different on that. But you could have
Yes.
like a couple of nuts before you go to bed, and that should sort of stabilize your blood sugar level, which should, in general, reduce that cortisol spike.
Mm.
Temperature, it's have a coolish, not a cold, but a coolish shower before you go to bed. Wear like light cotton, natural materials, have different layers of bedding, keep a foot out, everything that can help with that. With myself, I've had the odd hot flush or night sweat, but because of the mindfulness training, I'm far more in tuned to my body, and I can feel it coming up. So
Mm.
if I shake off the bedding or put out the foot at that initial stage, it doesn't spike. So I think being in tune with your body, and that is something that, you know, I talk to the women about, is like, do you actually understand how your body works? And then anxiety tends to increase. There's lots of breathing exercises that you can do. Again, when you feel that anxiety coming up, you start doing those exercises before you hit the peak of your anxiety.
Mm.
It is that awareness, and then becoming comfortable, and that's a really long coaching process, becoming comfortable with this different you're still you, like you know, and your body still does a lot of work for you. You get out of bed, you get dressed, you take the kids to school, you go to work. Don't diss your body just because it's behaving a little bit differently. So that
Mm.
level of acceptance, and knowing that for many, once you get to the postmenopausal stage, a lot of your cognition processing comes back online. And then actually talking about the fact that hormone replacement therapy, or MHT as it's called, menopause hormone replacement, can be really, really helpful in balancing that. Now, there was a study done in the US between 1993 and 2002, which came out with results that weren't quite as anticipated. So HRT got a really, really bad
Mm.
reputation on the back of that. A lot of that has now been reviewed and found that it targeted the wrong age group of women. So,
Oh.
yeah, they were looking at women 65 to 75 and going, well, there's an increase in cancer, for example. Well, that tends to increase as we get older anyway. That's not HRT related. So,
Okay.
so there's lots of misunderstanding around HRT. Again, it doesn't work for everybody, and on the back of that, there are so many different ways of administering HRT, patches, gels, what have you not. It takes 12 to 16 weeks or 3 to 4 months before it actually takes effect, right? So, and then finding the combination that works for you. Just understanding that, whatever pill you take doesn't work immediately, and to
Yeah.
be kind to yourself and allow your body to adjust with whatever path you go. So mindfulness awareness doesn't happen, oh, I'm doing one meditation, I'm going to be good for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It all takes work, right? And we want the quick fix because we're feeling so terrible.
Yeah. No, that's such great advice, and thank you for sharing. So, in closing, if there is just one thing that you could pass on to, women, men, companies, whatever that is, as a piece of advice or just some wisdom from you about this particular topic, what would that be that you'd like people to know?
Be kind to the women, right? It's not a personal failure on their part. It's a neurological, biological process, and they shouldn't be penalized for it. And it's really extending that kindness, that understanding, because they'll stay, they'll reward you for being kind.
Mm, amazing. So true. So true. Well, Sonja, thank you so much for joining us and all your incredible wisdom that you've got on this topic. And, I'd really love for people to be able to connect with you. Have you got a website that you're able to share with us as well?
Sure. It's www.adventureyourself.com.au. And I chose that name because that phase is an adventure that we go on. It's an
Oh,
exploration.
yeah.
You're covering new ground. So I don't want this negativity around menopause. I want us to embrace, I think, is a big ask, but I want it to be an adventure. It's worth exploring. It's finding a new you. So that's, yeah,
I
www.adventureyourself.com.au.
love it. I love it because it is an adventure, and it's just that you're just getting to another version of you, really, and you're just going for an adventure to get there. So perfect. I love it. Well, Sonja, it's been an honor to have you. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And yeah, we look forward to sharing your message to the world.
Thanks, Angela, so much for having me, and great that you bring this up to the table.
You're welcome.